Our speakers will be walking us through Can the Cloud Deliver a Bright Future? Exploring strategies to deliver cloud transformation. Over to you, Vladimir.
Hello, welcome to our session on the cloud. My name is Vladimir Bekvansky. I'm with PayPal, dealing with various aspects of technologies, including cloud. It is my great pleasure today to moderate the questions for our panel. And I would love to ask our panelists to please quickly introduce themselves and tell us in few words, what is that you are doing in the cloud? So perhaps we can start with Douglas.
Sure. Doug Lange, Chief Strategy Officer, State of Arizona. When it comes to what we're doing in leveraging the cloud, there really isn't a component of IT that we're not making an investment in, and we haven't been for the last 4 years. So whether you're talking about our cyber strategy, our hardware and infrastructure strategy, the business applications that we use, or the productivity suite that we've deployed across the state of Arizona, we're making really big bets when it comes to cloud technologies, and we've been seeing a lot of success.
Awesome, thank you. Paul. Oh, your microphone is on mute. Oh, we don't hear you. Larissa, I don't hear you either.
Can you hear me now?
No, now I hear you.
Yes, Paul is here, but I think he's having some issue with his mic.
Okay, so in the meantime, Paula, let's try again. No sound.
Maybe you should refresh your browser, Paul, please.
Well, perhaps while Paul is connecting, Larissa, do we have anybody else here besides Doug?
No, it's Doug and Paul. Vladimir.
Awesome. So there is Paul. No sound. I think there is an option to try to dial in over the phone, so we may get a voice that way. I think in the control panel on the left-hand side, there is a dial-in button. I think you should see the phone number.
Vladimir, maybe we should start.
Yeah, while Paul is connecting. So, Doug, you mentioned quite a range of interesting applications in the cloud, coming from some that are kind of suites of products like emails, documents, and similar, that are probably having easy adoption. Tell us about this spectrum. What did you see in your adoption as simple things to migrate to, and what were the more challenging ones?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, when it comes to what's easy and what's going to be more challenging, when you start investing in cloud-based applications, you're really going to be going towards change, right? Which means it can be very simplistic, it can be very complex. But whether you're touching on your users' needs or you're touching on, your IT staff and the people that are managing and maintaining the systems, there's just a lot of change that goes along with grappling with understanding the technologies and how to leverage them and how really to ramp up with them. So, whether we're rolling out, a productivity suite across 90 agencies and 40,000 employees across the state, or we're extending a CRM within our own organization, and then extending it through communities to our agency partners. We really try to take a pragmatic approach with anything we do, and that's not only in how we engage our users, the change management strategy, the deployment strategy, but then really governance. Right? Are you holding yourselves accountable? Are you staying on track? Are you hitting your marks? And ultimately, are you seeing the wins that you're trying to when you're making an investment like that?
Awesome. Thank you. Paul, let's try if we can hear you now.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you. Fantastic.
Excellent.
Awesome. So Paul, if you can tell us.
I was going to say, first of all, somebody who can't use the telephone should not be believed, so carry on listening to Doug.
Yeah. If you can tell us a few words about yourself and your efforts in the cloud.
Okay, so as I was trying to say earlier, I am Paul Moxon. I'm the Senior Vice President of Data Architectures at Denodo, and I work with a lot of customer organizations with their data strategy, and inevitably, when you're talking about a data strategy, the cloud comes up. So work with many organizations in all different sectors, public and private sector, ranging from banking, manufacturing, insurance, etc., about their strategies, their data strategies. And then, like I said, that always involves how they migrate to the cloud, how they adopt the cloud in general.
Awesome. And on the range of efforts that you have seen in cloud adoption, what did you see? What are the easy things that you have done, and what are the more challenging things?
I would argue that potentially there's no easy thing to do in the cloud. As we'll probably be aware that even moving something simple like I'm going to move a database, I'm going to set up a file sharing site on AWS S3, somebody will get something wrong. So I think you've got to be careful when you say about easy. But I've seen people do what could be relatively simple things like a lift and shift, there's a SQL Server database up to Azure, all the way through to actually migrating their ERP system from Oracle Business Suite to Infor Cloud Suite. And to me, that's akin to changing your engine as you're driving down the freeway. It's not something you should take lightly.
Very good, very good. Now, thinking about the different cloud technologies that you have used and applied, what did you see as powerful and enabling technologies that immediately deliver the benefits? And what did you see as something that is difficult, something that you have experienced has limitations in your attempts to transition? Doug, maybe we start with you.
Sure. I think when you go towards the benefits, I think in general, as someone who used to run a custom, dev shop, you're investing in best of breed platforms, right? And you're getting the features and functionalities and analytics that really come along with that. So, instead of having your developers trying to keep up with the pace of emerging technologies, you're really relying on, some of the biggest tech companies in the world to handle that. And you're really focused on configuration and your users and what they need to be successful. Another thing would be you're getting a robust ecosystem of talent and knowledge sharing. So, depending on the size of your organization and in your budget, sometimes it's not realistic to go out there and get the top tier talent when it comes to developers. And I think, the reality that the cloud brings is, there is a pool of talent that you can source from and use as you need it. But not only that, there's a whole community for knowledge sharing. And that's so important, whereas you're not just stuck in your own silo in your own organization. You have companies all over the world that are leveraging these technologies, and you have a community of people that are happy to share, where they're deploying, how they're doing it, where they're winning, and how those best practices can apply to your organization. In government, where I currently reside, it pushes you into more consistent funding streams. Which is key, right? You have a CapEx and OpEx challenge there, and the government's a lot more likely to fund keeping the lights on than they are on individual expense every single year. So optimize cost modeling if you do it correct. The collaboration, right? I think getting into the cloud enables your organization to collaborate at a whole different level. And really what that leads to, and something that's really important in today's world, just enabling a remote workforce, and not only the flexibility, but right now, the safety for all of us and in our families and in our employees feeling good about what they're doing when they're waking up and doing their job every day.
Awesome. Thank you. Paul, how about yourself? What did you see as kind of great enablers, and what are the areas where the wheels are still kind of squeaky and don't run so smoothly as they should? Paul, we don't hear you.
Now, okay, technology challenged yet again. There are two comments that Doug made, one which I agree with very strongly, the other one which I'm seeing slightly different things. The one I agree with, Doug, you talked about keeping up with technology, keeping up with advances. And I actually call it leveraged innovation, because the innovation that we're getting out of the Amazons, the Googles, the Microsofts of this world, especially in the area of analytics, they're pushing things along faster than you may have got from your traditional analytics vendors. And also, they are enabling companies to build advanced analytics practices around, say, machine learning, image recognition, et cetera, natural language processing. I would love to know how many, in the state of Arizona, how many departments would be able to do image recognition or natural language processing if you didn't have those pre-built building blocks coming from Amazon or Microsoft. But now, as a developer, you can go up there and you can start building these fantastic applications using these advanced technologies, because they've given you the foundation. And it's relatively cheap. So you're really taking advantage, everybody's taking advantage of the innovations done by the cloud providers. So I think that's a huge area of benefit for all organizations when they adopt the cloud. They have all of this innovation laid out for them to go and consume. The bit I sort of don't quite see eye to eye with Doug is you talk about collaboration across departments. One of the things that I'm seeing in a lot of, especially larger companies in the private sector, is that there isn't really a truly coordinated cloud strategy. They'll talk about a cloud strategy, but then different business units, different departments, different geographies are going off and doing their own thing. So they might be talking about our cloud strategy is blah, 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 and we're doing it with Amazon. And then you find this business unit over here has gone off and built something on Google Cloud because they want to take advantage of Google Cloud. And all of a sudden, you've got a fragmented strategy, and there's nobody really owning it or managing it, and everybody's going their own way. And my fear is that we've got this fantastic capability in the cloud, and we're going to build a hairball architecture in the cloud instead of on-premise and ruin everything that we could have.
No, it's so true. I couldn't agree more. That really was the precipice in a lot of ways for us. 4 years ago, state of Arizona, we had 30 plus email systems in the state. We didn't have one common place where you could go in terms of a directory and just see people in different roles in different agencies that you had to engage with. And it forced us down the path of an enterprise strategy and approach. In us getting on, 90 agencies, one platform, when it came to our productivity suite. We're currently leveraging G Suite. That's 40,000 employees that were forced, for better or worse, to start using the same tools in terms of how they communicated. With the pandemic that hit, in just how that transitioned government specifically into a remote workforce that typically it wasn't comfortable with. The ability for us to collaborate has been huge. But in terms of the point that you're making, I would even refer to that kind of getting into shadow IT, right? You have different business units that are deploying things that they like, they're comfortable with, they're successful with, and that can quickly spin out of control, and all of a sudden you do have a very disjointed collaboration and communication strategy within, just because you have so many different technologies competing.
And actually, you made the point that your funding model is smoothed out because of the cloud and the consumption model. And that actually has that counterpoint that now it's very easy for a certain business unit, a certain department, a certain agency in the government to go off and basically start using something on Amazon, whereas the strategy is towards Microsoft, because now they've got that lower barrier for actually starting to consume that service. They don't have to come back with the big price tag, which has got to go through countless reviews until somebody says, no, I disagree. They just go and spend $1,000 to get started, and then they're using it. And I'll be honest with you, my experience in state government is that it is actually better managed than a lot of private companies. I've worked with the state of Ohio, and they've really got their act together about their migration to the cloud across the different agencies. But when I go to insurance companies, when I go to some of the big financial services companies, the JP Morgans of this world, et cetera, the business units have so much power that they can go off and actually do their own cloud strategy within asset and wealth management, within securities and derivatives, et cetera, because they are, in the private sector, they're the revenue-generating business units, so therefore they have budget to do what they want. And that's harder to manage sometimes than maybe within state government.
Oh, yeah, and that happens, that absolutely happens in state government as well. And I think you hit on a key point too, right? Optimized cost modeling can absolutely be a benefit of cloud-based technologies, but your knowledge and acumen internally to really wield that and leverage it the right way could absolutely be a limitation as well, because you can spin up instances really quickly, and they can get out of control if you don't know what you're doing. And I think, it's a matter of, you just have to be really honest internally with yourself in terms of where is our knowledge gap, where is our organization's acumen, how quickly can we ramp up? Do we need, a managed service provider to come in and help us ramp up to make sure that we do this the right way? And I think, getting it right, especially as organizations shift to more, multi-cloud approaches, it's critical, because each one of them are going to have their own set of pros and cons. And I think, the power is there to really get what you need out of it, but you have to take the time and take a step back and make sure that you're building it, implementing it the right way that's actually going to support what you're trying to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I agree.
Excellent. So Paul raised something really interesting, and this is the innovation. So with the cloud and with the company that are behind it, there is a tremendous amount of innovation and technical capabilities that now become available as services. Probably a good example are machine learning and AI that are now exposed as service calls. And just as a little anecdote, just before COVID, I was a judge at the middle school and high school hackathon. And there was this team, there were 4 girls, probably 12, 13-year-old, and they have used the AI APIs from Python. And in 4 hours, they have assembled AI application that is doing image recognition. It could tell what kind of objects are in front of the camera. There was a voice recognition for the commands. And this is just a few kids in 4 hours they could assemble something like that without really having deep expertise. And imagine these capabilities that we are getting now in the cloud, where very sophisticated computing is exposed as a service that we can use. That is adding tremendous power to the enterprises, and where you can have, without necessarily having built really foundationally strong AI or ML, you can be a very good user of these technologies to advance your business.
No, I agree.
On that note, there is also temptation to go crazy with all the offerings that a cloud is providing. And Doug mentioned a couple of really important things. If you just let people use everything freely, it may quickly descend in the chaos. And even worse, you may get hit by a pretty significant bill if you have your instances being running indiscriminately, if you're using services that might be expensive. And here we come to the question of governance. On one hand, the cloud providers, you just go to the AWS or GCP or Azure portal, and you see all of these wonderful services and capabilities. You may want to organize their use in your own enterprise, introduce some type of a governance. And I feel one aspect that is really important is transparency and visibility into spend, so that the users can be kept accountable for the cost they incur. So I wonder, Doug and Paul, what did you see around the successful governance for the cloud?
Doug, let you go first.
So, in terms of governance, I think that is an ongoing work in progress, always. I'll use two different examples where we've relied on governance pretty heavily. So when it comes to just an infrastructure perspective, one of the things that we really wanted to set out to do, so you have, let's say, 20 to 30 data centers across the state of Arizona, and then one state data center that ultimately, it comes out of the enterprise office, and we just needed to get out of that business. Well, the first thing we did was, we migrated probably 1,000 workloads to the cloud. We retired about 10 to 15% of what we were using because it was just redundant or it wasn't, necessary anymore. And then there was about 5% that we moved offsite to a third-party hosted data center. And that wasn't just our organization's footprint. You had agencies from all over the state that were leveraging and consuming that. Well, you're moving a lot of different things there. And we not only had internal governance committees in terms of, okay, when you're looking at the project plan and the strategic approach, how long are we going to take to do this? What are our milestones? Are we staying on track? You had internal governance teams with the subject matter experts really rolling through, okay, what are we moving? How is it going to impact the organization? What is the right way ultimately to do this to make sure we're not taking down critical business functions within the agencies? And if we are they citizen facing or are they internal facing? And ultimately, where do we know and have a really good idea of what needs to be done? Where do we need to be bringing in some of these big partners that can help us walk through the more complex systems and in the more complex workloads? And I would say that the beauty in it is we got to the finish line. Well, for the state of Arizona, that equated to roughly like $4.2 million in cost savings annually, getting out of that data center. And the beauty is, and I always use this as an example, because in IT, a lot of times you can talk about cost savings, you can talk about efficiencies in terms of your wins. That data center is now a parking lot. Right? And it was right outside our office. So very rarely do you get to actually see as an IT employee, the fruits of your labor literally are a whole building crashing down. And now that state property is actually being used in a different way. But, whether we had to go that route with our infrastructure or, we had a governance approach with our productivity suite and how we deployed that over the course of 2 to 3 years across the state. There's just so many layers, and I don't think you're ever going to get it right. You just need to be constantly paying attention, adapting, and figuring out where are you winning, where are you losing, where are some of those challenges, and how do you just continue to move forward to get to the finish line.
Awesome. Paul?
I mean, when you asked the question, you mentioned a couple of things about transparency and openness. And I think it should not just be in costs, but also in how you use, and this goes back to some of what Doug was saying, but how and why are you using a particular service? Because it could be that there is actually a better service. You, as that relatively naive user, you pick on, oh, this service sounds good, I'll go and use it. And like Doug said, it's very easy to spin up an instance and start using a service. Is it the best service to be using? Is there a better one which is more appropriate for your particular use, for your particular business case, that you should be using, which may actually be maybe more expensive, maybe cheaper, but are you going to pick the best one? And Doug talked about, getting expertise. And I think whether it's in-house where you build some sort of center of excellence, or you get external consultants to come in, domain experts who can help you and guide you, you're going to make mistakes. The cloud is a very complex environment, and as Doug says, when you go to multi-cloud, it gets even more complex because how you configure your virtual private cloud and your security in AWS is different from Azure and GCP. So you really need to get that domain expertise in to help guide you to make the right decisions, because making the wrong decisions can be very expensive. It can ramp up those costs. So I do think that you need to have that expertise to guide you. You do need to have transparency in terms of what it's costing the organization. And I've fallen foul for this myself. I had my IT department going, Paul, why is this bill so big? And I found out that one of my team members had actually spun up a data warehouse instance in the cloud and forgot to shut it down. And that's thousands of dollars a few weeks later. And it's, what are you doing? But having that sort of feedback can help those runaway costs, help prevent them, make people aware of the consequences of doing things like spinning up instances of data warehouses. And also, like Doug said, having that expertise to guide you on the right way to do things so that you don't stub your toes too many times and have those expensive mistakes.
Exactly. Excellent. Now, I will have one question for both of you that is related to positioning of the cloud in an enterprise. So one form of engaging with cloud is that the IT department is saying, okay, now we have the cloud, and instead of filling out the forms and waiting 6 months to get a server from us, we will provide this to you much faster. So in that way, the cloud is acting basically as a supply line for the existing IT department. You can also think of a completely different way, where the cloud and cloud native capabilities are actually viewed as accelerator that can transform the way how the company is doing their software. And in that way, you'll be using things like database as a service, messaging as a service, a variety of things as a service. And the question is, what happens then with the IT role? And then who owns these applications and who should own the cloud in an enterprise? Should it be centralized function? Should it be federated across different business units or product lines? So I'm curious about your view on that.
Paul, you want to take that one, or you want me to?
Okay. Start? Okay. I will give my stance, and then you can tell me where I'm wrong. Certainly, IT does have a very important role to play in the cloud. I think about some of the cloud transformations, cloud migrations that I've been involved in. You can't, as a business user, you can't go and just start configuring your systems on the cloud, whatever it is, whether it's that data warehouse, whether it's a data lake, whether it's a mailing system, an ERP system. You can't just sit there and, as a business user, start configuring. You'll get lost, you'll make mistakes, it won't be configured optimally, etc. So IT definitely needs to be involved in the configuration, the security aspects of your cloud transformation, your cloud transition. You can't just ignore that. Now, once it's actually set up and I've got my database, I've got my mail system, I've got my ERP system, let's say Salesforce, I've got Salesforce up and running or something like that, should IT own it after that? Because really, all of the administrative side of it is handled by Salesforce or is handled by Amazon or Microsoft. So maybe IT doesn't need to be involved in that day-to-day running. And I know within Denodo, we use Salesforce quite extensively. It's actually owned and managed by the sales operations team, not by IT. IT actually, we contacted IT and they said, no, you've got to go and talk to sales operations. They manage and run Salesforce because it's a tool for the sales team. So they gave it to the sales operations team so they could manage it and use it as they wanted. And because all the backups and all the administration is done by Salesforce, IT don't need to touch it. Setting it up, setting up NetSuite and things like that, IT was involved to make sure it was integrated with our other systems, security and everything was there, but then they stepped back out of the way. So Doug may have a different view coming from the IT part of the state of Arizona.
No, I think you hit it on the head. And I mean, it's going to come down to any organization's appetite for just ownership and control. And you know, my background, I came from GoDaddy. I spent the first decade of my career there. Well, you know, they're a tech company. They love their tech. Well, you know, I saw it from both angles. I ran business systems where it was part of the business and you had control of the app layer that you were referring to. You know, there were other parts, you know, in that journey where business systems was a part of IT, right? And they just wanted the control of the people actually touching the applications to be housed within, you know, engineering and development. And ultimately, you had subject matter experts on the business side. I think I agree with 100% of what you said. I think from a state's perspective, and you see this pretty frequently in government, you have states that are constantly grappling with, should we be centralized or should we be federated when it comes to IT and really coming down to that control. And in state government, there's just so much money involved, right? And it's a really big political decision with every administration. And I think, you know, Arizona's a federated state, but we're very much trying to take an enterprise approach to what we do. And I think there's a middle ground that we're trying to hold a line on that aligns, Paul, 100% with what you talked about, which is we have core strategies and core pieces of technology where it just makes more sense to take an enterprise approach and ultimately let, you know, the enterprise-focused agency manage and control and just take that off of the plate of some of the agencies. Well, when it comes to, you know, the application layer, you're talking 130 agencies, boards, and commissions in the state. If our office took over all of those applications, we would literally stop all innovation in all advancement from a technology perspective because it just doesn't scale. So what we want to do is we're defining guiding principles. We're defining a strategic approach in terms of what types of technologies we want to invest in. We're negotiating great enterprise agreements that the agencies can attach to. But when it gets down to the business applications that they use, we want them to have control ultimately and really be able to work directly with their users and figure out what makes sense for them. How are they serving the citizens within a given agency? What is their mission? They're always going to know that better than we are. And that's where we're trying to hold that line, you know, very much how you articulated.
So I was just to help me understand that, because in the state of Arizona, are you centralizing things like, for example, HR systems or security and networking, and then the agencies go off and do their own thing?
Exactly. So we're centralizing network. We centralized our cyber strategy. So it doesn't mean the agencies won't have a layer above and beyond what we're doing. But we absolutely have a set of controls that we want agencies to use. As I mentioned, we enterprised our productivity suite just to find a way to get everyone connected. Where we're not enterprised is if you go to the business application layer, we will very much promote SaaS-based solutions. We will very much promote configuring over customizing. But we're more of a knowledge resource or broker to the agencies to say, if you're looking to modernize a 20-year-old application, look at a Salesforce, right? Look at, whatever else in their realm that you're comfortable with. Ultimately, we care that you're aligning with the state strategy and we're here to help you, but you're always going to know your agency at that level better than we are. Drive it and own it, and make sure you're, providing the best citizen experience you can.
Doug, you have pointed to something really important. When you're migrating to cloud, there is a variety of approaches from lift and shift to don't even bother migrating. You have an old application, just replace it with a suitable equivalent that is available as a service. To, okay, now we had a system, for example, running on mainframe on one very large machine with high throughput and so. Now you get into the cloud, there are no mainframes, you have a number of smaller boxes. And then if you would like to have the same functionality, you need to have a true distributed architecture with very different principles, very different technologies and knowledge. And that can be very challenging for the newcomers to the field. I'm curious, what is your experience? What was the approach that you have encountered most of the times? And when it comes to re-architecting, how often did that happen and how did you help yourself?
So I can speak from our perspective, and I don't think Arizona is unique in what we're challenged with. You just have a lot of very antiquated technologies, right? You have a lot of business apps that just were never modernized. And maybe it was, where the state wanted to invest their dollars and it didn't make the cut. Maybe it's an agency that realizes we have an IT staff that understands this technology, they implemented it. This is where their skill set is. And we don't want to go through that process of change. The challenge when you get into government is all of those systems in one way or another are pretty much tied to citizen-facing services that everyone out there is consuming, including us on this panel. And I think so it's not a matter typically of just turning it off. You have a lot of business apps that are out there that need to be transitioned in the right way. I think our approach is really as a state, where is our biggest risk? Where is our exposure? Where are those applications that are really big agencies need to be successful? And how are we going to swarm them and ultimately knock it out? And I think in 4 years, we use a lot of different SaaS-based solutions in the state, but I can say in 4 years, when you even look at our Salesforce footprint, we went from probably less than 5 agencies in the state to, well over 30. And that's huge because some of those agencies, are really large. Some of them are outside of state government and you're getting into cities and counties. But the more that we invest in that, I think Paul hit on something earlier where you get into centers of excellence and you start to get into different things where now our counties and our cities and the state agencies can work together, right? They can start to figure out, okay, do we offer citizens a similar service? It ultimately, is there a way all to do this at the same time versus having everyone try to go it alone and take the challenge of implementing a new solution and modernizing and doing it a bunch of different ways? So I think for us, it's very varied. We're not starting with just low-hanging fruit and then working towards complex. It depends on what the technology is, what the challenge is, and how quickly we think we need to move on it.
Awesome. Paul?
I think when you're deciding, what systems are appropriate to modernize in the cloud. I think there has to be a reason for doing it. Sometimes you do get people who and I've actually seen this in some companies, we're moving to the cloud. Why are you moving there? Because the CTO says so. That's not a justification for abandoning an on-premise system and moving to the cloud just because somebody said so. So usually there's a reason for moving it. It's cost savings. I want to move up to the cloud onto Azure and get off Oracle on-premise because of costs, or I've got a legacy system which is too expensive to maintain. So most applications can be moved to the cloud. Most applications can be replaced with something as good or better. Your point, Vladimir, about the mainframe, I think that is the big challenge which everybody is going to come down to, staring in the face and doing, what do I do with this mainframe app? The mainframe app, there's one company I've been talking to which does credit card transaction processing, and it's got a tandem nonstop, it's got a mainframe, and there is nothing like that on the cloud. And they are building this highly distributed microservices architecture out there, and I'm looking at going, I hope this works. I really hope this works, because it scares me, and it's not my job on the line. And so they're the ones that I think are going to be very, very challenging. Everything else, I think, can be moved to the cloud or can be basically repurchased as a new system on the cloud, moving from a legacy HR system to a new HR system, Workday or something like that. You can do that. The big question on everybody's mind is this my chance to move finally off the mainframe? And I think that's still a big question mark over the cloud. I am watching one of the companies I work with very closely on that one.
Awesome. Awesome. We are almost at the end of our time. I would like our panelists to come with 60 seconds closing thought for this session. So, Doug?
I think when it comes to just the importance of leveraging the cloud, I think it's, cloud smart, right? It used to be cloud first. And I think people are transitioning to cloud smart. And I think there are just so many different technologies out there that can help an organization, but you need a strategy, you need an approach. And I think taking the time to take a step back and really figure out what is our current state and what is our future state, and then figuring out, okay, when we understand our future state, whether it be business process or customer facing, now let's apply cloud, right? Now let's apply updated emerging technologies to really enrich the experience or optimize it depending on what it is. But I think people fail when they think that the technology is going to solve the business problem. They need to start with the business problem first, that process, and then figure out, okay, what's the right technology to enable us to ultimately be successful?
Awesome. Thank you. Paul?
I actually love that term, cloud smart, because I think it does sum up the right approach to cloud transformation. As Doug said, cloud is a technology, and it's how you apply it to solve your business challenges, your business problems, whether it's to build new business opportunities, new revenue streams, provide better services to your citizens, etc. It's a technology. It is not an end into itself. And sometimes people get so wrapped up in the technology, transitioning to the cloud, cloud transformation is the end goal, and it's not. It's the technology you apply to help you improve your business, improve your services, etc. So I think that's right. Cloud smart rather than cloud first or cloud only. Cloud smart is the right message.
There we go. Cloud smart. With these words, I would like to conclude our session and thank our panelists and our viewers. And I wish everybody a productive and smart transition to the cloud. Thank you.